Hello, everybody, and welcome to Empowered Conversations. I am so excited today. I'm bringing back my actual very first guest on Empowered Conversations. Her name is Pasha Marlowe. And, pleasure is so much more than just sex. What fills you with a sense of freedom, joy, and aliveness? On today's episode of Empowered Conversations, as I said before, I am through the roof excited to bring back my friend Pasha Marlowe. Pasha recently released her book, My Next Husband Will Be a Lesbian. So excited to talk to her about that. I've been reading the book the past couple months. This is a collection of stories from women discovering and sharing their truth. The authors of this book are a diverse group of women, all figuring out creative ways to design relationships while honoring their sexuality. Pasha also speaks about healing with humor and how to move from a place of rupture to rapture. Pasha is the host of Let Pleasure Be the Measure podcast. She holds a master's degree in marriage and family therapy and is a holistic health coach and life comedy coach. She created the groundbreaking program R.O.A.R with laughter, a therapeutic and transformative 8-week experience that culminates into a live comedy performance. All right, everybody, help me in welcoming, drum roll please, Pasha Marlowe. Hey girl, how you doing?
I'm good. What a fantastic intro. Thank you for all of that.
You know what? I wanted you to help me pronounce Womxn correctly.
Well, it's women, but there's controversy behind this. When the book was published, the conversation in the LGBTQ plus community was more inclusive languaging. And literally since February 14th, when it was published, now there's a lot of conversation and understanding and awareness that it could be exclusive to the trans community. And so I'm doing the best I can. And
right.
We all do, but when you know better, you do better.
Absolutely.
So it's still pronounced women, but a lot of times we're using the X instead of the E, or not. So it's
right.
personal and individual. So I just want to put that out there that I'm understanding the sensitivities and controversies around it.
Absolutely. Without further ado, I am so excited to be talking to you today. I'm so proud, like when I see people like yourself who are just doing such incredible and extraordinary things out in the world. And, for those that, you were my very first guest on Empowered Conversations, October 30th. And, it was such an incredible conversation. But I'm not sure if some of my listeners or some of my viewers today, remember the conversation. So just, tell us, about your background, at the end of the day, your why, epiphanies that you've had in your adult life that led you to what you are doing for the world today.
Yeah. Well, I spent 49 years taking myself super seriously, doing things, being a good girl, getting the degree, marrying the guy, white picket fence, yada, yada, yada. Being a mommy of 3 kids, love them to death. And a year ago when I was interviewing with you, really the focus was my son, my youngest, who's now 13, Jamie. He's chronically ill and he's been suffering for over a year and a half now. And it changed my life because there's always a catalyst moment. And for me, it was the fear of losing him to this illness or to him taking his life because of the pain. And in facing death and grief and fear, I was thinking, whoa, what is my life about? And who am I? And I forgot to have fun. I forgot to access my pleasure. I never laugh. I don't play, and I wasn't feeling good about what I was role modeling for him and how to move through the grief and pain. And I really needed to increase my own energy so that I can continue to help and heal him and continue to serve my clients. So I started the R.O.A.R with Laughter therapeutic comedy program, and then floodgates open, because once you start to realize and reclaim your pleasure and your power and your desire. I'm like, oh, wait, I want a lot of things. I want money and travel. And I think my sexuality is more expansive than I've been letting on. So I think I want to experience sex with women too. I have no evidence to back up my claims, but I read a damn book about it. And then I was like, I'm not going to do a pleasure podcast because we need to have these conversations about releasing shame and limiting beliefs and accessing pleasure from sex to coffee, and it's all good. It's like, pleasure, tiny pleasure practices. And so I have just become really fierce in my pleasure and laughter practices.
I absolutely love that. And just speaking, you mentioned coffee. So, we've spoken numerous times, and I know that when you get up every day, you're dedicated, like you execute your day, in the way that shows self-value and self-worth. And that in and of itself is pleasure. And, every day I get up, my day is started with fresh squeezed lemon and water. And then I'm drinking my bone broth. And then I'm eating a healthy breakfast. And, there for a few months last year, I was watching while I would drink my coffee, in my sacred space, sitting over there in my little sacred space, I would watch I Dream of Jeannie because it was just so silly and so funny, and it's like, this is bringing me pleasure. And it's just the little things that we're doing for ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm very impressed. So you do lemon water and bone broth. I do lemon water and then a whole lot of coffee.
Yeah.
And have bone broth, a lot of it. I just forget to drink it.
Oh, I make my own, girl, and it's so delicious.
Yeah. I try to do all the things.
Right, girl, you're doing you. It's like we're not competing. We're never competing. But it is hard.
Yeah.
But it is like, oh, because we resonate with one another. We resonate with all these, especially women in our community. And we'll talk about the midlife mischief, community. And it's like, and it is hard to go, oh, look what she's doing. Like yesterday, I was beating myself up. I had energy work 2 days ago. I had Reiki. My roommate, who's actually coming on my podcast later this month, is a Akashic record reader and Reiki practitioner. And she did a Reiki session on me on, let's see, this was on Monday. Yesterday, I was, my energy, and again, it's because you're releasing and healing and moving energy, and that causes, you need rest. And then by the end of the day yesterday, I'm beating myself up, comparing myself what I didn't do. It's like, but this is part of it. Sometimes the action is no action and resting.
Yes. And absorbing and integrating an experience or celebrating something you've already done instead of quickly moving on to the next thing. I'm on that. It's you got to make space for the stillness, which is hard because that's where all comes up, like being still in meditation, yoga. I could not access that, even though I teach it and did for decades. In grief and fear, I felt like it was too much to sit in my stillness. So I release through laughter. Like, I think as long as you're finding something to move through the stress cycle and it changes, each day, perhaps what you choose. But I think there's so many ways to do it. Yeah.
And we have a comment from Lucy Rosa Staggi. She says, hey, Stefani and Pasha, wanted to say hi. I have a previous commitment and we'll come back for the replay. Thanks, Lucy. She's so fabulous. So tell me about, like this Roar with Laughter program. I've been a part of your Zoom, your Friday, I think it's like Friday night Zoom, and everybody's interactive and fun. And then you have your the people who've done the R.O.A.R course. Talk about a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, you're like my favorite audience member because you're always laughing out loud and showing so much expression, which is just such a gift to the performers. So we're like, yay, Stephanie's watching. It's fun and challenging. We move from rupture to rapture in 8 weeks. We talk about our traumas and our pain points and our shame and our religious and sexual traumas, like deep stuff.
Yes.
And everybody determines what they're going to do their comedy about, but it's therapeutic comedy. So we start to find the edges and parameters of humor and comedy around even the challenging and dark times. And then we reframe our lives through the lens of humor. And we start to figure out what it is we want and take our power back and reclaim our pleasure and desire as part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all done in sisterhood. So like you're with
Yeah.
6 or 7 other women who are also walking this journey with you. So it's safe and empathetic space. And they all become best friends, which is
Yes.
such a joy to watch how they hold each other in that space. And then we do a show. It's a live comedy show, which I know makes people just pee in their pants when they hear that. But the truth is, and you've seen it, it's like, it's not like you have to be a stand-up comedian or a performer to do it. You're just telling your truth, telling your story. And if nobody in the audience laughs, like, I don't care. It's really about your story. The last show, somebody did a fairly powerful, heartfelt performance about body shame.
Yes.
Not rolling on the floor laughing. They were going like resonating.
Crying. Yes. Yeah. Emotional.
She did release some of the tension through some humor too. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's transformative and therapeutic at its core. So I take my marriage and family therapy and therapy world lens and the theater, and then the embodied emotions through my, personal training, Pilates and yoga background, and then this laughter and pleasure work. And it's 8 weeks. It's like a ride. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So what are some of the transformations that you have seen? Like you say that, they're healing their pain. I mean, it's healing the shame, the pain through this lens of humor. For instance, I've been writing an autobiography for over 5 years, and I'm determined to get that published this year. Good. And it is a story of all the bullshit, but it's a hilarious account of all the bullshit that I've been through and some other hilarious life happenings, because my life has been filled with hilarious events, painful events, but I'm able to see the victorhood that is associated with persevering through the experiences and telling the story in somewhat of a humorous way.
Yeah.
So, and tell me, some of the transformations that you've seen with some of your, clients that have done the R.O.A.R.
Yeah. And then the best stories are always heartbreaking and hilarious. The transformations that are coming to mind are really, they turn into tragedy. Even after R.O.A.R, there were people who lost their spouses. There was people who lost their parents. And unfortunately, in the last show, my dear friend, Katie, lost her husband and her daughter. And right around the time of the show. And to watch her move through her grief, through the lens of grief and humor, and then write the most beautiful, brutal obituaries at the funeral, and that the audience was laughing and celebrating the life of her husband and daughter, and that she was able to find humor and joy and pleasure in the stories, and still hold all of the heartache, was beautiful. I've seen people go to hospitals with their spouses and sing and dance through surgeries. And I've seen people reclaim their sexuality and leave partners that no longer serve them, or bring on partners that were in their pleasure, ask for raises. The transformation is a couple people have gone on to do comedy and actually performing and do one-woman shows and stand-up, but that's not the general, the typical person who goes to the program is just like wanting to break free and liberate. And then she does something else after that like opens her up even more, writes the book, does the TED Talk, for the raise, does the thing,
It's amazing when you push through those blocks and you heal that baggage that's been hovering inside your body, around your energetic field, what that then opens up for you to receive and allow yourself to do and be more bold in your purpose.
Yes. It's so empowering. It's so empowering. And I'm sure, like after you do one scary thing, you kind of want to do another. It's like you're thrilled and all of a sudden you're turned on and you're like, this is feeling like I'm alive now. Okay, well, I have to take another risk, and it's a safe risk, but it pushes me outside my comfort zone. So I'm constantly trying to find myself in that zone of genius and way out of my comfort zone where I'm really scared, terrified, but thrilled. Yeah.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
I love it. So, okay, I want to talk about your podcast, Let Pleasure Be the Measure. And, in my opening statement, it's like pleasure is so much more than sex, but it absolutely includes sex.
Yeah.
So, talk about like what like sparked your epiphany to start that podcast around that subject. And
Yeah, well, it scared the shit out of me, so I knew I had to do it. Let pleasure be the measure. I said, oh, everyone's going to be thinking I'm going to talk about sex, and I think I will. And
hell yeah.
so the last episode I just recorded just prior to coming on with you was a woman who talked about threesomes and how to invite somebody into your marriage. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is me talking about this now. Okay.
Yeah.
The one before that was about ADHD, and then there's another one on sexual trauma and trauma triggers and raising sexually healthy children. So it's all pleasure. It's all pleasure. It's like what lights us up, what brings us freedom, what feels aligned, and sometimes that's an orgasm, and sometimes it's like a walk with your dog. That's fine. It's all there. And finding ways to sneak pleasure into the even difficult days really speaks to me. And a lot of people who listen to the show are dealing with chronic illness themselves, or somebody in their family has chronic illness, or there's a pain or transition they're going through. And they're like, can I still have a pleasurable life? I'm like, yes, you can still sneak it in the daily tiny habits.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I was listening to one of your episodes. I think her name is Jen Weiserman. I have it here. And how to raise sexually healthy children.
Yes.
And that relates to a podcast I did a week ago about raising self-aware, conscious, kind children.
Nice.
And it's all tied into that bundle. And I love what she said. She said, we're putting kids into adult bodies without all the information that they need. And, what was one of your biggest takeaways with speaking with that particular guest on your Let Pleasure Be the Measure podcast?
Yeah, Jennifer Wiesner is a good friend and an excellent sex therapist, and she does these amazing programs. The takeaway for me was like, when you talk to your kids, like, don't wait till they ask a question like, "Mama, what's sex? Mama, can I masturbate? Mama, is pornography okay?" Like, that's probably not going to happen. So we weave it into when we're making dinner, when we're taking a ride in the car, when we're playing a card game. That's going to take a lot of pressure off, and it's going to make it more organic and far more comfortable for the parent and the child. So we've been doing that, and it's really working well. Yeah.
Right. Love it. So now we're going to talk about the book. Yes. My Next Husband Will Be a Lesbian. Yeah, girl. Yeah. Here's my coffee. Yes. And I also posted the link. It's everywhere within the show notes for people to click on and purchase the book. So tell me, because you had mentioned a few minutes ago about all of a sudden realizing that I'm attracted to women. I want to have sexual experiences with women. So yeah, just share.
Yeah. Well, this is really funny because people just are going to assume that I have this wild sex life with myself or somebody else, and I don't. I lead a pretty boring life behind the scenes, sexually speaking. So yet I have still desires and more expansiveness than I was allowing myself to realize. Of course, when I look back, I think, oh, I actually had those thoughts or desires and fantasies back in college, and ongoing. But I did the thing. I walked down the aisle. I wore the white dress. I married the guy, and then I divorced the guy, and then I married another. And like, I did the stuff because it felt at the time like the right thing to do. And I really wasn't allowing myself to know what the options were. Like, it is okay to be in a heteronormative relationship and then choose to be with a woman or somebody of the same sex. It's actually okay to be polyamorous or bring on if it's all consensual, and I know this sounds radical and maybe even unethical, and I'm still saying I haven't experienced it yet, but I'm open to it because I feel like curiosity is really, and play and pleasure is a part of me that I had not yet explored. And when I talk to women, especially midlife women, like the 45 to 65-year-old woman, it is very hard to find a woman who has not struggled in the bedroom with thoughts and fantasies that go through her head that are not aligned with her reality.
Right.
And if you can if you could bring the fantasies into your conversation, or if you could bring the desires into, you know, a different arrangement, it doesn't mean everything has to fall apart. Most partners are actually very willing to be flexible and adaptable. And some marriages are complete, and some women I know have moved on to take on female lovers and have decided that that's what they want to do right now. But it's like ever evolving. And you could ask me tomorrow and I could be like, I'm good. I'm great. I'm going to stay in my marriage and do the thing. And then the next day I'll be like, no, I really want to explore. It just depends on my mood.
Yeah. And, you know, Pasha, so why you mentioned, you know, having these desires and these thoughts in college, but you're like, oh no, it's not right. Where do you think that idea comes from, that it's immoral or wrong or not right or not normal?
Yeah, I didn't have a
What do you
religious
think?
upbringing myself, but I have heard a lot of people talk about religious trauma or just religious beliefs and values. My family just did not value pleasure or leisure, laughter, or any of this at all, and they were not open about their sex and sexuality. So I think there was just this underlying level of secrecy and shame that ran through my family and upbringing. And then even in the theater world, which I so, you know, mercifully joined when I was younger, it felt like it was almost the norm for people to be homosexual and explore. And I just felt very closed off and shy and timid and not confident in my body. And so I bring it back to sexual trauma. And I think that the sexual trauma made me feel unsafe in my own body and really able to explore anything from solo sex to partner sex or wanting more. And so I've worked through 50 fucking years later, a lot of the sexual traumas and shames, and been really just trying to be as forthright about it as possible with myself and then with my partner. And yeah, so it's a conversation, and it's a difficult one, but one that needs to happen.
Well, I had this epiphany, and this was right around 1998 on my first trip to Amsterdam. And I saw how open and free they were about the body, all parts of the body, penises, testicles, vaginas, vulvas. I mean, you'd go into a coffee shop or a clothing store or you know, and there would be pictures of full nudity. And I remember experiencing a level of confidence in the people. They just permeated this self-confidence that I, you know, at that point in my life, experienced with, as Americans, as that repression equals perversion. And, you know, like child molestation and rape are almost unheard of, or they're certainly not to the degree that it's experienced and happens over here. And my thing is, it's like, why, you know, why is there so much shame around the very thing that brings us into existence?
Yeah, like we all came from an orgasm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, and where that starts and what that creates. And like you were talking about, like a sexual trauma. So sexual trauma is perpetrated by someone who I feel like, or has experienced sexual trauma. And again, it's, you know, sexual trauma and like this repression and then this false dichotomy that they perpetuate exists, and they base it on science, which is bad science, and it's incomplete scientific data, that, you know, male and female sex drive are dipole opposite. And sex is, you know, we grow up, you know, at least in my experience growing up, is sex is for a man, and women are shamed. And the victim mentality. I was watching Trevor Noah yesterday about the girl Sarah who was killed over in London recently, and I didn't even know that had happened until I was watching a show. And it's always the victim. It's always like, well, why were you dressed like that? Why were you doing, you know, it's always the you know, the onus is put on the female or the victim of the crime, instead of, why don't we teach our boys? Why don't we teach men, you know, to have this healthy value of their own bodies, and this, and women in healthy. It's like, you know, what I heard in that episode you did with what Jen,
Jennifer.
yeah, it's like having these conversations, because sex and wanting orgasm, and children are touching themselves early in life, and when you shame and say, no, that's bad, that's wrong, what that perpetuates is that shame, and then they grow up, and it's, I think it creates toxic masculinity and rape culture.
Yeah, it very well is part of it. Sure, certainly. I think we need to teach boys and girls, men and women,
Yes.
boundaries and consent,
Yes.
and shame, and then also celebrate our sexuality,
Yes.
and start to not feel like it's something that's scary or dangerous or taboo or shameful to
Right.
be out with it, to walk into a room and not feel like, I've talked to so many women who round their shoulders and hide
Yes.
breasts, because
Yes.
it's too vulnerable and scary to walk in like tits out, like here,
Owning your power.
right? And it has occurred to me that, like, oh, am I putting myself out there? Is it putting me in danger? And the pain of not expressing ourselves, and the pain of holding in our full expression of self, that hurts too. So I
Yes.
this quote, which is, and then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. That's Anise Nin.
Yeah, I just got cold chills.
Hmm.
And, another thing, that is so apparent in the book that you published is, it's being in your truth, being in your authentic self. Not everybody has desires for the same sex, but those who do, it is natural. Another book I'm not sure if you've read, it's Dr. Tatiana's Sexual Advice of All Creation by Olivia Johnson. It came out in the early 2000s. I'll share that with you. But she, goes into the, estrous cycles and the natural sexuality of insects to birds to mammals. And sex is natural. Bisexuality, homosexuality, it's in nature with all, with so different species. And, again, I did grow up in a religious household, Southern Baptist, and it was no sex until marriage, period. And even at that, there was still this shame that was perpetuated within, like, even within marriage, the confines of marriage sex, and missionary, nothing kinky, nothing too crazy. And it's like, that's not natural either.
Right.
And just, I think it just perpetuates this sickness, just this sick, unnatural, disgusting, toxic sexuality.
Well, the good thing is, the refreshing thing is, if you talk to a younger person, like younger being like under 20, like when I talk to my kids or a child about sexuality, they're like, so, like, literally, like, so,
Yeah.
because we're not born like feeling like sex or sexuality or expansiveness or curiosity are wrong. It's like it's conditioned out of us. And so
Yes.
younger people, it's really refreshing because they're just like, love who you love, do you. And I'm like, oh, hold on to that. Just hold on to that. Yeah. And keep walking that path. It's really been interesting also to talk to people who then are, let's say, 50 and up, who are just like, oh, fuck it, I'm not playing by these rules anymore. I've been
Right.
a good girl, good woman for too long. And what do I really want? Like, who am I? And who told me what to be? And why am I scared of them anyhow? And there's this like wildness that comes out. I love that. That's really fun to witness.
Yeah. I wanted to read one of my favorite stories in your book.
Okay.
I wanted to read a couple paragraphs, and it's the chapter is Kiss Chase, like Kiss Chase.
And so this is not my chapter, by the way. This is a chapter from a woman named Nicola, who's British. So it's kind of funny to hear your accent and read hers.
Oh, that's hilarious. I hope she's watching, or I hope she gets to see this on the replay if she's not.
I'll share it. Yeah.
But this speaks to what we're talking about like, well, that's not, that's not right. So anyway, when I was 7, we played the game Kiss Chase on the school playground on a daily basis. I knew the routine. Boys and girls lined up on opposite sides of the playground and ran toward and away from each other to kiss each other. One day I boldly lined up with the boys so I could chase after and kiss the girls. One boy asked, are you a lesbian? I did not know what a lesbian was. So I asked him and reveled in his response. I didn't know a single other lesbian, but I knew that this was who I was. I was buzzing with excitement all day and couldn't wait for my mom to pick me up at school so I could tell her I was a lesbian. As my mom approached the school gates, I shouted across the playground, "Mom, I'm a lesbian!" She returned a look which let me know that I had said something wrong. Mom asked me if I knew what a lesbian was, and I told her what I knew. She said, "Nicola, girls don't kiss girls." And that was the end of the conversation. I knew that this was something I shouldn't speak about again.
Mm. For those that are wondering, the rest of the story, which is quite beautiful, is that she goes
Yes,
on to have a beautiful relationship with her mother, who is now completely accepting and celebratory of Nicola's lesbianism. And
that's
Nicola went on to not only reclaim her desire, but to challenge all of her conditioning about like how work is supposed to look and having a 9 to 5. And she travels the world and lives in something like 60 different countries with female lovers, and works from her laptop on the beach and sends me photos. And I'm like, oh, that's possible. Yeah. So that's her story growing up. Yeah, pretty cool.
And amazing what opened up for her when she started living her authentic truth.
Yes. That's what happens. As soon as you start speaking one truth, the rest pour out. And then you're like, whoa, liberated. And then there's no one-way liberation. You're liberating somebody else. And then it's like, this is what I'm here for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now, how long have you been a holistic coach?
I became a holistic coach and personal trainer. Oh gosh. That's been now 25 years or so. It's been a while. I was a marriage and family therapist initially, and then the holistic wellness work. And I've owned a lot of gyms and yoga studios and personal train, like hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I love the work. With COVID, I haven't done it as much. I'm going to return to it this summer. And what always lit me up the most, before outside of talking about exercise and nutrition, wellness, awesome. But what about like the social and sexual and emotional side of people? And that was lighting me up as much as anything. And so that's why I really went into the laughter, pleasure, like life coaching. That's what I do mostly now.
You have really had a huge career that is centered around service to others.
Yes.
That's so spellboundingly amazing.
From day one. I can't say it has ever made a whole lot of money, but I sure feel purposeful.
Absolutely. And that lights you up again, living your life alive.
Yes.
And
yeah. Don't put me in an office with a cubicle. You will not see a smile on my face. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say a portion of this story is my ADD and dyslexia, which is late in life determined or diagnosed. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like I literally did not do well in school, almost failed school. Cannot imagine. Like when I go through I'm like, I'm not making enough money. I'm going to look at what jobs are out there. Oh my, like looking through classified ads, it gives me a panic attack because I cannot see myself doing any of them because I cannot see myself fitting in those boxes or sitting in one place or having similar conversations every day. Like I need a lot of stimulation and change, variety.
Yeah, me too. That's why my career in outside sales, I was always, at various places, different places, talking to different people.
Yeah.
And that, that was so fulfilling for that amount of time, but that's not even an area that I'm supposed to be pursuing, no longer. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I know that you have another obligation here in a little bit, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. Pasha, this has certainly been a phenomenal experience. I so appreciate you coming on again and sharing your heart-centered passion.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, and it's a pleasure witnessing your journey. And I'm constantly inspired by your energy, your humor, and your willingness to just dive right in, and how you bring us along for the ride. Like
Yeah.
when and you do a good job. You sneak pleasure in, so you're on the treadmill already. You're like, I could also do a live from the
Yeah.
treadmill. I'm like, that's smart. I have friends who podcast while they're walking. I'm like, I don't have to stand here in my garage with a light in front of me. So yeah, we can always sneak pleasure and laughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And learn from one another.
You got it.
You know, learn from one another, appreciate one another. And yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching Empowered Conversations today. All the links to work with Pasha, become involved with everything that she's got going on, to purchase her book are in the show notes. However, I will be posting links to how to purchase her book. If you're interested in her R.O.A.R coaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We start a new season tomorrow. So if somebody
April 1st.
sneak into the new seventh season. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate you having
You're
me.
so welcome. You're so welcome. All right, guys, thank you so much again for joining Empowered Conversations. We'll see you. Oh, remember, tomorrow, Siobhan and I, food therapy, we are making my amazing Asian broccoli slaw. Asian broccoli slaw salad. It is out damn standing. So defo-rickin-licious. And we're going to be talking all things limiting beliefs, how we all have them, and how we can work to dismantle them so we can have so much more greater lives that are filled with so much excitement. All right. Yeah. All right, guys. See y'all.
Bye.
You don't go anywhere real quick.
Well, okay, let's say.